Okay, so this video should conclude chapter one, the introductory chapter 1.1, 2, and 3. This is 1.3 market system. There is a nice flow diagram, which we already described previously, and we will try and describe it maybe a little bit more in depth. But let's just go ahead and go through 1.3. We are describing the market system. The members of each economy must provide. Oh, and before we begin here, we have paragraph one, paragraph two, which I'm actually going to kind of, as if it's outstanding, we're going to do an underline. If you underline something, it's the same as, if we're taking notes in class. If we underline bullet points one, two, and three or something like this. But there's a lot of stuff that we read in here that, as always, I think is very, very difficult to understand. We try our best. It's going to come a little bit later. We're going to describe that flow diagram, but some of it is very straightforward. But it's just I'm not really sure how to describe it. We see here in chapter one, I'm sorry, paragraph one, and paragraph two, we describe some bullet points, but they're not just some ideas in there. This is an actual very, very good description of the market system, its purpose, and some sort of basic concept behind economy. So let's just kind of get into this instead of me trying to talk about that. So the members of each economy must provide answers to three basic economic questions. So our focus are those three basic economic questions. Yeah. So what commodities to be produced? Yeah. Uh, how these commodities should be produced? Yes. And how these commodities should be distributed among economic agents. We've defined that economic agents as a fancy one, not really a company, a person. Any member of an economy, whether it's a person or a group of people, is basically an economic agent. So yes, all individuals and combination of individuals, companies, they're all economic agents, yes. But we have those basic three bullet points. They'll tie into the next paragraph as well. Let's just kind of read that again. The members of each economy must provide answers to three basic economic questions: what commodities to be produced, how these commodities should be produced, and how these commodities should be distributed among economic agents. So there are, of course, many ways to answer these questions, including a top common type economic system. The government completely controls the economy, or a socialistic system. The government controls the major industries in the economy. So we shall concentrate on the mixed capitalistic economic system, wherein the basic economic questions are answered primarily by markets and prices, with some governmental inference and guidance with respect to resource allocation. Now, this is not, a big point I'm making. I'm really not making a big point. I'm just saying it. Please ignore it. But this is not a history class, and this is not really a poli-sci class. All these classes, economics, poli-sci, they have a lot of ideas. I shouldn't mention it because it has nothing to do with the class, but any economics class, introductory or above, any economics class in existence is typically talking about capitalism. And I'm not going to get all preachy about capitalism. The United States is the all-star of capitalism. It's the only thing that's correct. Yeah, but we would always be talking about capitalism. To say anything else is just stating a bit of history or things that we've had previously. But if there's certain economic functions where supply and demand define itself, it's always an economic system anyways. Anyways, moving along from that. So this is kind of more key features. So let's discuss this. Uh, abstracting from governmental inference and activity, abstracting from governmental inference and activity, a capitalistic system has certain key and necessary features. So now we go ahead and we describe those. The first is primarily private ownership of resource. Yeah. The second is that individuals seek to maximize their own self interest when making economic decisions. The third is individuals have freedom of choice in deciding on economic activities. Okay, so fourth, yeah, markets and prices answer the three basic economic questions. Yeah. So already we're kind of it's brand new and we don't really know what we're talking about, but what does it say fourth? Yeah. Markets and prices answer the three basic economic questions. We don't quite know what this all means, but the three basic economic questions were back up here. Yeah. These were the three basic economic questions: what commodities to be produced, how these economies should be produced, yeah, and how these commodities should be distributed among economic agents. All of us kind of have a very, very basic understanding of what's going on here. If there's something like 7 or 8 ideas on the page, we simply don't really understand how to tie them together, but we kind of see what they're describing. Now, sometimes just inherent, more philosophy, but inherent features of human nature, paragraph 2. The first is primary private ownership of resource. The second is individuals seek to maximize their own self-interest when making economic decisions. Yeah, some of this really is kind of a statement of human nature, but I think they are. I'm kind of a beginner in economics. I think they are kind of a, proven key fundamental features of economics. So third, individuals have freedom of choice in deciding on economic activities. So the fourth tie-ins to this paragraph up here. Markets and prices answer the three basic economic questions. Yeah. And then fifth, perfect competition. What the heck is that? Yeah. Perfect competition can convert self-interested optimization into common good under certain assumptions. Okay, so whenever we just say something very general and elegantly as they do, it's hard to understand, but those are very important ideas that kind of tie into this chapter. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different here. So the essence of the operation of capitalistic, the essence of the operation of a capitalistic system can be illustrated using the circular flow diagram. Please see figure 1.2. So here's the thing about 1.2. We did very, very thoroughly do this in a previous video, so we have already covered this right here. Now we have covered this, and it's, if we really, really kind of describe it in depth, like we're going to, it's very difficult. But in this one, we kind of describe it under, more serious kind of conditions than we did in the previous chapter. So let's see if we can kind of give this one a try right here. Okay, so this description is hard to understand, I think, but again, kind of recapping more thoroughly on a previous video. But this is, I'm not really sure how to say it. This is the very, very in-depth kind of underlying of the circular flow diagram. The very basic, my interpretation of that is what we did. I drew on the whiteboard in a previous video. So anyways, without further ado, this illustration, apologies, kind of a new word for some of us, but this illustration elucidates, just basically illustrates the interactions of households and businesses in a market economy. Individuals are endowed with human and non-human capital, which they supply to businesses in return for monetary income. The conversion of resources into money income is accomplished in resource markets where a price is determined for each resource. In each resource market, a supply of that resource and a demand for that resource determine market price. The price and the amount supplied then determine a consumer's income and business expenses. Individuals are on the supply side of resource markets, whereas firms are on the demand side of resource markets. Businesses use resources purchased in resource markets to produce want satisfying, what does it say? Business use resources purchased in resource markets to produce want satisfying commodities. For simplicity, we are ignoring intermediate products in our diagram, which they will supply to product markets. Individuals will use their income for resource supply and demand commodities in product markets. Their consumption expenditures will be converted into business revenues through supply and demand interaction in product markets. The issues of what techniques of production should be used and what products should be produced will be determined by business profit maximization in reaction to consumer demand. The issue of how output should be distributed will be determined by income distribution and demand. The system of prices determined in markets then answers the basic questions. So all of this that I'm reading is all supposed to be in this circular flow diagram here. And yes, we are specifically describing the market system. This circular flow diagram, I apologize, does illustrate the market system, and the description that we're currently reading illustrates the market system and the circular flow diagram. Okay, so we have excluded the impact of government in the above flowchart, but of course, the various levels of government, local, state, and federal, do participate in the allocation of resources and in spending. Regulation can enter the system through direct controls on individuals or on business. Examples of direct controls on business include controls on how workers can interact in the workplace. Many employers are required to give, and employees are required to take courses in sexual harassment prevention, and controls on the procedure that firms use to hire new workers. Examples of direct controls on how individuals consume are plentiful. In Los Angeles, customers of the Department of Water and Power with odd-numbered addresses have been required to water lawns only on Sundays, Mondays, and Thursdays. And the city has banned the opening of fast food restaurants in certain areas. California has banned the use of plastic bags by retailers. In addition to direct controls, there are indirect government controls throughout markets. In resource markets, there are minimum wage constraints, and recently the federal government has restricted bonuses for the financial services firms receiving federal subsidies. In product markets, the resource markets, indirect controls would include all taxes and subsidies opposed by all levels of government. In our mixed capitalistic economy, the government is quite important in terms of its reach and its degree of control in the operation of our markets. In terms of the circular flow diagram, one can think of the government sector as a separate entity capable of enacting any type of direct or indirect control on markets or individual agents. It could be illustrated as a separate circle with tentacles reaching into each of the other circles. How important is government in our economy? One measure of its importance is the percent of gross domestic product, the value of all goods and services produced domestically in 1 year, originating from the government, public sector, federal, state, and local government. In recent history, the number has been on average between 30 and 40%. Thus, indeed, the US economy is primarily a private ownership market economy. Okay, so 1.3, in my opinion,